Hey guys, Ron from FunctionBuilt-Aquatics, and you're currently watching my youngest batch of Betta Antuta. This is the Betta Antuta fry. This is the second batch. These guys are feeding on the freeze-dried tubifex worms cube. That has made a huge difference in my secondary feeding of the day. I feed most of my fry fish twice a day now. Nathan typically feeds them in the morning before he goes to school. And in that feeding, it could either be frozen food or maybe some flake or pellet food. But for the second feeding of the day before I head off or when I get back from work, I typically will go with the tubifex worm cube so these guys can actually pick at their leisure and feed until they're full. I've learned from past experiences with having different sized fry, but from the original batch, that the main reason has to do with food availability. And with this Betta Antuta batch, I made sure the food was available to these guys twice a day. Now it's a little easier to do with the Unimaculata complex when the fry are pretty large from the get-go, but for the most part, it proved my point correct that you can maintain pretty much all the fry at the same size, not have any runts whatsoever. And in this batch, there pretty much aren't any runts. Everybody's pretty close and similar in size. They compete equally for the food, but the food is still readily available to them, so the ones that are less dominant still have an opportunity to go in and get their batch and get their group of their nice feeding themselves. So I'm going to move on to the Betta Hendra fry, and I'm going to show you the same process, which is the same secondary feeding with the tubifex worms, where they can pick at their leisure, and you'll see similar size in that group also. So next video will be Betta Hendra. Okay guys, like I mentioned in the prior video, this is the Betta Hendra group. These guys are pretty much all within a week or so of 4 different spawnings. So what I mean by that is the adult pair I had spawned once a week for 4 weeks. So the age difference in this tank is pretty much within 1 week. But yet all the fish are pretty much still very close in size. There are some that are a little bit smaller, but the size difference is not vast. When I bred my Mahachiensis, I had a lot of different size variants, but they were all from the same spawn. And I learned from that experience that the reason being is the food available to the fish just wasn't enough, or did not carry the proper fats or caloric intake for them to maintain a steady growth pattern. And with the freeze-dried tubifex cubes, I use it as my secondary feeding of the day. I'm able to allow these fish to actually feed at will. When one fish is fed to his basic limit, he sort of moves on, and then someone else who's less dominant gets a chance to move in and feed too. And with that being said, as you can tell in this video, the fish are very, very close in size. And like I mentioned prior, a lot of them are a week. There's a week age difference in them. These guys will be available for sale at some point. So will the Betta Antuta in the first video. But I have to make sure that I'm in a position where I can sex them. I don't want to guess and send you unsexed pairs. I was able to actually sell 3 pairs total in the past week and a half to 2 weeks, but those guys were from the original batch, first batch, and they were pretty much, I was able to determine the sex differences not only by their behaviors but also by the patterns and the stripes. But this is Betta Hendra feeding on tubifex worms, second feeding of the day. Thanks for watching, guys. Okay guys, this is my first batch of Betta Antuta, and this was also the first time that the male and female that I have actually spawned. So unlike the other Antuta video, the numbers of fish in this batch varied. They weren't anywhere near as numerous. I think there might be 15 or 20 actually Bettas, actually Antuta in this batch. where the other one I probably had close to 50 or 60. But these guys are a week and a half, maybe possibly 2 weeks older than the ones I showed you in the prior video. And as you can tell, they're nice size, also feeding on the tube-effects worms. These guys are all now finally catching up to each other. I learned this process, unfortunately, after these guys were born, or I would have been able to maintain the sizes a little closer. But I've learned that with growing out fry, it's a lot better and also easier if you feed them twice a day. One feeding a day is just not enough. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that have been breeding betta fish and killifish and other fish in general that learned that way before I did. But I can only tell you from my experience and my process, you know, I learned that through the different sizes. And I'm going to show you a video on the Mahachiensis. And the Mahachiensis video are fish from the same batch, one batch, and there are a lot of different size groups in that fish. So check the next video out. Okay guys, this is the Betta Mahachiensis, as I mentioned in the prior video. These are all from the first and same spawn, and as you can tell, there are a lot of size differences in the spawning. Now, I bet a lot of this is somewhat normal for splendens and maybe even wild bettas and bettas in general to have a lot of different sizes. But my main concern is runts and, unfortunately, you know, culling. I do not want to have to cull a lot of fish if I don't have to. And I think the best thing to possibly do is to, you know, find a way to get the fry to have food available to them enough to where they all can grow up and grow out, no matter how dominant or less dominant a fish is, on an even basis. And I found by feeding them twice a day and giving them a more sustainable feeding in the second feeding, which I use the tube-effects worms to do so, I found that I'm able to maintain the growth rates to be similar. Unfortunately for the Mahachiensis, these guys were the first betta fish I ever bred in the Splendens complex. I did not know what I learned now when I bred these guys. The next time I actually spawn my Mahachiensis, I'm going to go through this process, and I guarantee you I will have a lot less size differences in the actual batch itself. Hopefully some of these smaller fish do grow out and turn out to be nice fish, but we'll see in time. It will be not too long from now that I'll actually have to remove some of these larger fish. Though they are not showing any dominance or any aggressive behavior yet to the smaller siblings, that's only going to come in time. This complex is known for its aggressiveness. So I'll keep an eye on them, and we'll start pulling out the larger fish pretty soon. I'm excited about these guys. These are one of my favorite fish, one of my favorite betta fish too. I love Mahachiensis. I love the shape, the dramaticism of the fish. So I'm curious to see how these fish turn out. Thanks for watching, guys. This is Big Daddy Betta Unimaculata Wahoo, and I'm going to show you some of his fry that are feeding on microworms. His first batch was extremely numerous. There were a lot of fry in this count, but unfortunately, like I mentioned in prior video, I waited too long to actually strip them, and I let them hold on for 20 days, and I believe the fry just starved, and that's why we lost so many of them. So out of 75 fry, I probably have about anywhere between 5 to 10 that survived.
Hey guys, FunctionBuilt-Aquatics.
Hey, Nathan just got home from school. What's going on, man?
What's up?
Not much, just shooting the wahoo and showing some of the fry that are cruising around the tank. How was school today, buddy?
Good.
All right, guys, thanks for watching.
Philosopher? Yes. 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 Yes.